Hello and welcome back to MindSpanse. I'm Craig, and thank you for taking some time with me today. I am continuing my discussion on public speaking. It is everyone's biggest fear outside of death, and plenty of data to support that. And what I wanted to do is marry my meditation practices with all the work I do in public speaking and also training executives on how to give presentations to deliver a great series for you, and to make sure you can always give a B+ presentation. The AA+ comes when you show up at the venue and you see what happens when your energy, where's your energy, and all this kind of stuff. But B+, straight down, as my jazz piano teacher used to say, just play in the pocket and it's all cool. And so this is in the pocket public speaking just for you. And it really breaks down into three things, and we're in the middle of the first, we're in episode 4 of the first part, which is preparation. And I call it the 3 Ps, which is a bit cheesy, but it's easy to remember. So it's preparation, then you practice, and then presence, how do you bring that energy to the event. And I also, in that segment, will deal with fear and some great visualization, meditation techniques to deal with fear and to elevate your presentation and how you connect with the audience. But today we're just talking about content, which is the last part of the preparation process. We talked about the nuts and bolts. So basically, you get the phone call from your boss and they say, we need you to speak at this event, because no one ever says, oh, please let me speak. I do, but and hopefully you will too after this. You won't be afraid anymore. You'll realize it's really easy and it's really fun, actually. And so the nuts and bolts, you get the call, you just get all this information about the event and the venue and who all the different groups are that you're going to be interacting with, and where you're going to stay, and what the venue, everything, so all that stuff. And then what they want you to talk about, or at least negotiate a topic with them that's relevant. Usually they have an idea of what they want you to say, but somewhere where you're matching your expertise and your excitement and the expectations of the audience and the sponsors and other parties that are involved. So that's the nuts and bolts component, which you'll find in, I think, episode 2. And then episode 3, we talked about the structure of a presentation, and I try to keep that really simple, and I pretty much do it the same way every time, which is I introduce myself, I say, hi, my name's Craig, and thank you for being here to listen to me. I tell you what my topic is. I tell you a little bit about myself, very little, just to give you some credibility that I'm somewhat of a functional person and worth listening to. And then I dive into 3 stories, 3 points, so 3 core points, a story to support each one of those, and then some data to support each one of those. Then I wrap up and say thank you very much, and here's how you can follow up and reach me if you like. And I smile and walk off the stage, or walk off the camera, or whatever it may be. So that's the structure, and I do it pretty much the same way every time. And then today we're going to talk about the content itself, and we're going to talk about slides and video and music and all this other things that some people like to integrate into their presentations. I would say the overarching view of all of that stuff is basically, if it doesn't add, don't use it. People didn't come to watch a video, they didn't come to listen to music. They came to hear what you had to say and to hear and connect with you. And so all the other stuff is just a distraction, unless it really adds something special and to your presentation and elevates it. And it's pretty easy to know, either it does or it doesn't. Either it's filler or it's not. And so let's talk about content. And I'm going to keep this as quick and simple as possible, because I do this at the same time, every time. So we'll break it down to each piece, okay? So my name, that's easy. Actually, I told this story before, but it is just funny. The first presentation, first big one I really did a long time ago, I couldn't even get my name out, and that was, and I really didn't practice, and I wasn't prepared, and I certainly had not been a big meditator at that time. So you will not have that issue because you are going to prepare, and you are going to practice, and you are going to be present when you get up there, and you're going to very easily say, my name is Craig Kaufman. I want to thank you for coming today, and I'm going to be talking about blah, 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 blah. Okay? Boom. And then you say, in my case, I say, I've been an investment banker for over 20 years. I've been teaching management teams how to give presentations to raise capital. I've been involved in over $50 billion worth of capital raising over the last 25 years. And I've been a meditation instructor, as well as I produce guided meditations and meditation videos on my YouTube channel. So I'm sort of a relevant guy to talk to, maybe. And I'm trying to help people overcome their fear and make it easy for them to say yes to deliver great presentations. So boom, 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 right? So that's your street cred. And then you dive into so we've dealt with that, right? So that's easy. And then you want to do 3 points, because people only can remember 3 points. And I'll say this 1,000 times, but some people just get so caught up into so many things, and there's only 3 things that people can remember. And it's sort of why I chose preparation, practice, and presence, because if you remember that, then you can go back and do the work on what each one of those things are. But if you follow preparation, practice, presence, you're going to be great. And so the 3 points that you have should be sort of in a story, beginning, middle, end. And they really need to, I think they evolve. It's organic, I guess, in a sense. So what I usually do in almost every case is I'll pick 8 points. So if I'm talking about, in the case I've been using, is when I had to go to China to give a speech on I have IT outsourcing, so Chinese outsourcers wanting to win more business from U.S. companies, and so I picked a whole bunch of different points. I'd never been to China, so I'd had to do a bunch of research, and so I suggest doing research on your topic, and also talking to people when you we'll talk about it in a second, but once you get like 6 or 7 points, now you can use LinkedIn or Facebook, and you put your points there and send it out to your friends and say, if anyone has any thoughts on this stuff, that would be really helpful. And you'd be surprised, people are really amazingly helpful. Everyone knows it's hard to give speeches, and you'll get a ton of feedback, and that'll help narrow yourself down and also get some interesting feedback that you can share, because there's nothing like real live research, interview with professionals and their feedback and their thoughts, because that's information that only those people have, and so you're now delivering that to your audience, and that's always a great way to engage them. So you come up with 6, 7 points, 8 points. In my case, again, it was I would need to figure out what there are challenges. Yes, there were challenges. I found out there are challenges that people were concerned about language, people were concerned about IP, intellectual property. Don't ever use acronyms. I still do it sometimes, but it's the absolute worst, because no matter what audience you're talking to, when you use an acronym, one, they get defocused because they're trying to figure out what it is, and second, they mean different things to different people, so just don't use them. So intellectual property. So people had concerns about intellectual property. Historically, it was safe to go to India to outsource, or it was safe to go to Eastern Europe to outsource. In some cases, depending on the type of IT services you're engaged in, you might go to Canada. So those were all acceptable things to do. So to go to China was sort of new, and at that time, and there were these issues, and people hadn't been there, and they weren't sure how things were going to work. What were the logistics of doing this? So there were all these things. So I had to narrow it down to a couple of things that were relevant, and then so that's the beginning. So there is a challenge. So acknowledging the fact that there is a challenge and there's a reason why it's difficult. The second thing was, so now we're going to the next part of the story, which is the next point, which is talking about some issue, very specifically a type of project and why people may or may not want to do that. And then the third point, and sort of using that as a way to articulate some of these other challenges that people have. And then the third was what you can do to fix the whole thing, right? So if you want to think about it, there are really almost two absolute core messages, which is there's a problem and here's some ways to fix it based on all this information that I've gathered. And so if you can get it down to two, that's better. So, because then it's, you know, very, very easy and you can never get lost and whatnot. So then you get your data points. I had probably 8 or 9 originally. I went out and talked to a whole bunch of people about their thoughts, and I narrowed it down to the 3, and primarily those 2 pillar points. And then I always tell a story, because stories engage people, and I always tell people that these stories are so important. Often you'll get stories. I always prefer personal stories. So I talk about my trip over there. I talk about my trip around China and what I learned. And so that sort of engages the audience and ties what I'm talking about into some sense of a perspective. And so you really want to think about personal stories. It's always good if you can tie something back to like when you were a kid, or something that everyone can connect with, or, you know, growing up, or something that made sense and it was relevant to what you're trying to talk about, is really, really good. And also these interviews, as you do these interviews or get feedback and maybe do some follow-up phone calls with people, try to think about it in context of, is there a story to tell? Is there, within this research or these conversations, is there a story that's exciting or that's interesting that I can share with the audience that would engage them, and then tie my points together? And so that's how I view content. It's basically, you tell the person the point, you tell a story around that point that articulates that point and elevates the point, and so people can remember it too, because people remember stories. And 3, get some data, so that it's a credible data. So you could say, 80% of their studies that say 80% of people are afraid of public speaking. It's actually higher, and it's only second to the fear of death, actually. And it's global. It's all across the world. So having these data points, finding some data points, and they can be anecdotal based on, my interviews with 10 or 15 CEOs. This is what I found out, and these are some of the issues that came up. And these are people who should be your clients, and they're choosing to outsource to India or Eastern Europe and not China for these reasons. And that's really valuable for people to hear. So finding those little data points that you can add credibility to everything you're saying is really important. And again, it's 3 bullet points, 3 stories, hopefully personal ones, because you also don't ever forget those, because they're stories you've been telling your whole life. And then 3 very simple data that supports your points that you're making, and that's it. That's the content. Now, a lot of times people feel that they need to have a slideshow. It's nice to have a slideshow. It depends. Most people can't read anything from 20 feet away. I certainly can't. And so it's so funny when I see presentations and there's like all this text and everything. I'm like, who is this for? Like, no one can read this. And certainly, maybe they can read 1 or 2 really big words. And think about if you're in an auditorium and you're really far away and the screen is not giant, unless it's a 20-foot screen, which is good to know. But even still, you should assume it's not. And so people are not going to be able to see it. So what's the point? So if you have 1 or 2 really big words and some great, awesome artwork or pictures that really articulate, or some sort of image that articulates your point. So you can have an intro slide that's really big and beautiful. you can have a slide for each point that you're making, and hopefully it's a really beautiful image. And then you have a wrap-up slide that talks about the 3 points again, you know, because that's the next part, is just to wrap up, which is, here's my 3 points, and here's why this is relevant. And then, thank you very much. Here's how to, and then maybe, you know, how to contact me. Big page. So it's like 5, 6, 7 pages max. And then in terms of video, I just think there's so many potential problems with video, particularly in a live event, that I would not do it. I mean, some people feel very comfortable and some venues are really awesome, but you never know. And I'd stay away from it unless it's like very short and really relevant, because I think it's really awful to go see someone speak and then they play a 10-minute video. I could have watched that on YouTube, right? So don't do that. If you use video, use it very, very sparingly and make it very impactful. And the same with music. I mean, you could have an intro music. It's sort of fun to walk on stage with some great music. It helps pump you up, so I'm sort of into that. But outside of that, and again, it's a chat. You just never know. So if you're all set up for it and it doesn't happen and you start freaking out because things aren't working the way it's supposed to work, I try to create presentation structures so that if nothing works and you have nothing, you can still deliver an awesome speech, because you're just introducing yourself, you're giving you some street cred, you're telling your 3 points, 3 stories, a little bit of data, and thank you very much. And anyone can do that. So that is the end of content. That's the end of this preparation section. And so now that we have all of that, we're going to go into the next section, which is practice. I have a very particular way of practicing, and I think it's really useful. And what you should realize, it is organic. Presentations are organic up to the day of the presentation. So this structure has flexibility because the events change, the world changes every day, and so don't freak out. It's just, you know, and as you're going through your practice, you're going to find that some points don't work that well together, or some stories don't work that well together, and so you just go back and tweak things a little bit so that they flow better. And that's why practice is so important, and particularly if there are multiple people speaking. Like for me in my work, often there's 3 or 4 people in management speaking, and getting them in sync and who should speak when and how and where. The only way to get that down is to do live rehearsals, a lot of them. And so we do that a lot to make sure that those transitions between the different speakers are really clean and powerful. So I wish you an amazing day. I look forward to starting practicing with you. Have an absolute great day. Always say yes. I say this now all the time. Always say yes, because that's where the adventure begins, and there's nothing to be afraid of. And just watch my videos and you'll be absolutely, totally fine. And you're going to give a great presentation. And please subscribe to my channel and like the video. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there you could share this with that could use it. I'm still very active with people all the time. And particularly with video now, like everyone has to be on Zoom and they have to do all these things. And so I really encourage you to share this with your friends, and I will speak to you very soon. Thank you very much.